Right, hello everyone. It's Saturday the 4th of October 2025, and apologies for not making a video for a while, but to be honest, not a lot's been going on. But this one is going to be a bit different. So for a recap, for those who haven't seen my videos before, I've been on Mounjaro, which in the UK is the weight loss drug. In America, it's a diabetic drug, but it's called Zepbound for weight loss. But I was on 7.5 milligrams. I'm going down to 5 milligrams, and I'm just going to taper off it. So the next 3 doses will be the last on Mounjaro. I might try Wegovy because it's cheaper, but I want to try a different drug. And the reason for that is I have lost weight, actually, with 2 stone, 28 pounds or 13 kilograms since the start of May. So that's 5 months. Which actually isn't too bad. It's nice, slow and steady. And I haven't had any side effects, really. You read all these horror stories about people feeling ill and all kinds of stuff. But I still get food noise and I still feel hungry. So I don't actually think it works me very well. I think the thing that has worked for me is doing more exercise and eating less. And you may think, well, it's working then. But the thing I was eating too much of is not my normal food, which is vegetarian, lots of lentils and pulses and things. But it was the kids' leftovers. There'd be slices of pizzas, and there would be some garlic bread or a bit of cake and things like that. And nibbling a few bits of that, you can easily get to 1,000 calories a day just on leftovers. That was my problem, basically. I'm also very lucky to have a bike I can ride outside. So I'm actually a qualified British cycling coach for kids, which I do on a Sunday morning. So I've got a Peloton bike in my lounge, and when I started Mounjaro, I also purchased a hydro rowing machine, which was called the Pro, but there's a new version, literally come out in the last couple of weeks, called the Origin machine. It's got some better metrics on it, basically. That pissed me off a little bit, basically. That might be for another video. Because to get these new metrics, you need to buy a new screen, which is a much better screen. It's high resolution with better speakers, but it's $400. And I'm in the UK, and it's not available in the UK or Canada at the time I'm recording this video, which is a little bit of bad, really. But at the end of the day, I get metrics from Strava. I still get metrics from the machine. And at the end of the day, the metrics are, am I losing weight and do my clothes fit better? So that's the recap. So this video isn't really going to be about Mounjaro or losing weight or anything, but it's around some scans I did on a local company called iThrive in a village called Puttenham, which is near Farnham, which is quite near me. It's a few miles away, basically. And they had the postman put letter through everyone's doors. So you get the stuff through the door, you get your normal post, obviously. And you get leaflets about double glazing and can I clean your gutters and all this kind of stuff. And iThrive put a thing through the door, and it said, it's got metabolic tests, it's got VO2 max tests and all this kind of stuff. They had some special offers on because you had the leaflet. I thought, this sounds interesting. So I've been meaning to do this for literally years. You can see your body changing when you're losing weight, but what's really going on inside, Are your arteries getting clogged up? Is there heart disease forming over decades? Some people just keel over dead. So I wanted to find out what was going on, basically. So as I said, they do VO2 max. They do related tests for sports people. They do things like DEXA scans, which is low dose radiation. We'll go into that in a minute, which shows you sort of bone density. It shows you your fat densities and things like that. Visceral fat as well. We'll go into that. 3D scans to show you your body shape, and various metabolic tests. So these are useful for people worried about weight like me, or people worried about menopause or perimenopause. So a lot of people, wide range of people can go there, basically. So I went there. What day was it? It was Thursday. So the 2nd of October. And it was awesome. But to be clear, right from the outset, this isn't a sponsored video. I paid for it myself. I'm glad I did. It really was good fun. I learnt loads. Probably, this is stuff you would read about or hear about on YouTube around, training slower and all this kind of stuff. And I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't have done the tests. So we'll go through that in the video. But to be clear, it's not a sponsored video. I paid just under £400 for a variety of tests. It was a bundle, all the metabolic tests basically to focus on weight loss and your resting, calorie burn, and all this kind of stuff. So let's go into it. Subscribe as well. That'd be handy. Cheers. Okay, so at the end of all the tests, they give you a little booklet like this with all your results in, and they email it to you, obviously, and you talk through this. It's really interesting. So the first thing I'll talk about is the body fat results. And excuse me if I'm looking down here because I'm actually looking at the book, but I'll put the screenshots up. So it's saying my total body fat is 27%, which actually matches my Withing scales exactly. They say 27% as well, that's good for a home scale that I've had a couple of years. So well done, Withings. That's good for you. So that is in the obesity range, but it's not severely obese, which is good. And they don't do BMI because everyone says BMI is a bit ropey because it depends how big you are, what you do, if you do sports and all that kind of stuff. So they do something called the Fat Mass Index, FMI, which is kilograms per meter squared. So mine is 8.9 kilograms per meter squared, which is normal, which is good. And they also do an age match thing. So it says 28% of people in their database, this is not iFly's database, obviously it's one they've brought off the shelf for the software, are actually fatter than me, which is interesting. So, but, I'm on Mounjaro. I know I'm fat. So I don't really need a machine to say that I'm fat because you can see it. But the really important thing is the visceral fat, which is the fat that's around your organs. And this is the sort of more dangerous fat. And it can lead to all kinds of stuff. Like apparently it can raise hormone imbalances. You can get things like increased cancer risk. It's linked to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, elevated blood sugar, increased blood pressure, things like that. And it can also lead to inflammation. So this is one where my scales, the Withing scales, do actually give you a score between 0 and 20, where 20 is the worst and 0 is the best. Anything less than 5 is considered normal. So my scales are saying about 6, which that doesn't sound too bad. I mean, the scales do say high. It's like, okay, let's get that down. But anyway, so iThrive obviously have much better equipment than my scales. They've got a DEXA scanner, which I'll put up some pictures. You lie there on this bed, which moves, and the scanner head moves over you. It gives out a low dose of radiation, and it goes backwards and forwards 3 times. And basically, it looks at your bones and your fat and your muscle, basically. So it's basically medical grade. It's the gold standard, effectively. And to cut a long story short, my visceral fat area is 236 square centimetres, which is classified as high risk. So I've got a scale here, and I'm almost off the end of it, which isn't great news, I guess. So that's something I will need to work on. So the scanner obviously looks at your body, at fat, bones, and muscles. And so because I've been on the rowing machine, I've done a lot of cycling, my lean muscle mass is actually pretty good. So there's this thing called appendicular lean mass, which is the lean tissue in the arms and legs. Focusing purely on skeletal muscle, it excludes organs and trunk, making it the gold standard for assessing functional muscle mass, mobility, and diagnosing sarcopenia, whatever that is. Anyway, so my score is 10.7, which is better than 87% of people my age, basically. And it says it's very high, which is great. So it's saying for young normal, I don't know how young is, 25 years, so it says 25 years, I am stronger than 86% of those. So I'm basically stronger than the majority of the population of any age, which is awesome. Now I'll put that down probably to the rowing machine actually, because it uses so many muscles, and I usually use it probably more than the Peloton, because I do cycling a lot anyway, to cycle to work sometimes. I do cycling at the kids bike club, which I coach at. So at home, I generally use the rower, probably 3 or 4 times a week, for half an hour, let's say, sometimes an hour. But we can talk a bit more about that later, actually, because usually I just go flat out, and I might have to change that. So if we look at the FMI and the LMI chart, it's a little bit faint. Hopefully the PDF I'll show will be better. But I'm in the top right-hand corner, which is obesity with high muscle, which isn't terrible. As far as in the top left, which is sarcopenic obesity, which is you're really obese, like really fat, and you haven't got much muscle. So these are people that potentially can't get out of bed, they can't move, they might be in a mobility scooter or something. That's like really bad. So I probably should have started with the metabolic blood test. So they did the lipid panel, which is checking for your total cholesterol, bad cholesterol, good cholesterol, and triglycerides. And so in the past, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I had one at work, and it wasn't great. And they said, you better go and see your doctor, because you need to drop these levels down a bit. So obviously I've been eating healthier in those days. I've done the Mounjaro, I've done more exercise recently and in the last year or so. And basically my total cholesterol is 4.52, which is below 5. So it's back into the optimal range, which is great. And it says my triglyceride to HDL ratio is 0.781, which is excellent with high insulin sensitivity. So I'm actually quite pleased with that, because obviously bad cholesterol is the shit that builds up on your arteries and blocks them off eventually. So I really wanted to see that go down. That's good that it has gone down. To save time, I won't go through the 3D scan, which you stood in this machine with your arms out and you rotated, and it basically scanned you. So it actually measured your arms and legs and your body and everything to see how big they were. And that's interesting, kind of, not for this video, but for a lot of people that might have muscle imbalance, or they might be, let's say, a javelin thrower or something. They might have a huge right arm because they're chucking a javelin, but the left arm might be like, tiny. So all of my scores, I was symmetrical. But for other people, that might be quite interesting, but I'm not going to go through that because it's not really for this video. And another test they did on the DEXA scanner was the bone mineral density. So I've never broken a bone, luckily, touch wood. I drank milk when I was younger. I don't now, but I've never sort of skimped on calcium. Let's say I've always eaten broccoli and eat my greens and things. I guess that's more interesting for people who might be worried about osteoporosis or going through the menopause or something. So, we're already up to like 12 minutes or something. So I will not talk about that either. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. So when you're on Mounjaro and these other weight loss drugs, you want to work out how many calories you need per day to stay alive, like your resting metabolic rate, and then have a little bit of a calorie deficit, so you're always going to be losing weight. So that's TDEE, which is total daily energy expenditure. So you can go to these calculators online and you put in your details, and then you can choose how sedentary you are or how active you are. And then quite often there's different formulas to choose. So I'm going to quickly put mine into this website. Let's do it on metric, I think. So how old am I? 49. My weight is 108. Height is 182. And I'm moderate exercise, because I also work at a standing desk. So I'm not sitting, I'm jiggling around all the time. I go on the row, I go on the bike. Body fat, we know that score now. So let's put in 27%. Calculate. Very interesting. Okay, I'll tell you why it's interesting in a minute. So this metabolic rate test at iThrive is you wear a mask and you lie on a bed, comfy position, just chill out for probably 10 to 20 minutes, breathing through this mask with your nose blocked off with a sort of bulldog clip. And I guess it's measuring oxygen and carbon dioxide, what goes in, what comes out, sort of thing, because obviously carbon dioxide is a byproduct of your body burning oxygen. which is interesting. So obviously it's much more accurate than a calculator on the web, basically. So it came out with me at 2,300 calories as my resting metabolic rate. So that's the rate of me just lying there doing absolutely nothing all day long. I just need 2,300 calories. And then because I'm doing a sort of standing desk all day at work and I do some exercise, it reckons that my TDEE, using my scores from the machine, are actually 3,267 calories just to stay at the weight I am. So without Mounjaro, without gaining weight, I need 3,267 calories to stay there. And if I cut back on that, then I'll lose weight, which is interesting because there's no way I'm eating 3,267 calories. I'm not counting them currently, but I sort of am in my head mentally. I'm not eating many crisps, I'm eating no cakes, I'm not eating pizzas, not really any takeaways, maybe once every couple of weeks, eating loads of fibre. So potentially I discussed with Mark at iThrive that I might be eating too few calories, which is interesting. But on the web, the results I got just a minute ago, it's saying, for moderate exercise, for someone my size, it's saying 3,213 calories. So it's really close. That's like 50 calories difference, roughly, which is quite incredible. So obviously these TDEE calculators are actually not too bad. So that's quite interesting. So another thing the report from iThrive shows is my recommended ranges of sort of macronutrients. So it reckons carbohydrates between 45% to 65%, protein 10 to 35%, and fat 20 to 35%. So it's actually really interesting reading that, because you think, well, protein, let's say I'm doing 35% of my calories in protein, that's 1,143 calories. So 3 grams per kilo of protein. So let's say, for easy math's sake, I'm 100 kilos. I'm not a bit high, I'm 108, but 100 kilos. That's 300 grams of protein a day. So in a protein shake, like Huel, a bottle of Huel, you can get up to 40 grams of protein. But shakes are less, they're usually about 20 grams per scoop. So that's a ton of protein. And remember, I'm vegetarian, so I don't eat like lumps of beef or anything either. So I need to work on a nutrition plan using Copilot or ChatGPT to say, hey, what do I need to eat? Because that's a lot of tofu, which is interesting. I eat tons of nuts and what's it? So avocado, mashed avocado, guacamole. That's what it's called, isn't it? Which is fat. Well, when I say tons, I don't eat loads because obviously I'm wary that nuts and things like that are really calorific. But I probably actually need to start counting them a bit more, maybe measuring them to get an idea of how much fat I'm actually eating rather than guesswork. Very interesting though. Cool. And then the sort of main event for me was the fat burning zones test. So I took along my bike shoes with clipless pedals on, and I got on a Watt bike. They had their nice Watt bike Atom, which I used to have actually years ago before I swapped to the Peloton, and warmed up for like 5 minutes, just a gentle warm up, 80 RPM, around, let's say 70 to 100 watts. So it got very light sort of heat coming out, a little bit of sweat basically. And then Mark faffed around getting the machines working properly and Bluetooth working and stuff like that. And then we went for a ride on the Watt bike. So every 3 minutes, it would increase the resistance by 25 watts, which is quite a nice big jump. And the reason for that is, I guess it's the same for the VO2 max test, where you want to be sure that your cardio system doesn't run out of power before your legs run out of power and fuel, basically. So I don't know what we probably started at maybe 75 watts and then started pedaling. So the graph I'm going to show you basically says when my heart rate is 98, which in my view is really low for exercise, which is like zone 1, I'm actually burning 322 calories of fat per hour and 133 calories of carbs. And then just the heart rate increasing to 107, sort of up to zone 2, it's still quite a lot of fat burning. But beyond that, the fat burn drops off significantly. So the last chart on the graph is a heart rate of 118 beats per minute. So up to now, this is ever since I've been wearing a heart rate monitor, which is years, probably a couple of decades. Anything less than 120 is like I'm not even doing anything. It's like I'm just pooting along, doing nothing. I'm not working. And so traditionally on the rower or the Peloton or when I'm out and about, a nice cruise where you feel like you're actually working, my heart rate's probably like 140. And then when I'm working really hard, it's like 160. And that's when like there's sweat pouring down your face, and I can still maintain that for a long time, like on an FTP test or something. And then sometimes on the row or the bike, when I'm really going for it and trying to stay ahead of the people on the leaderboards, I might get my heart rate to like 170. And obviously it's way off this chart. I'd love to actually go back and do another one. Maybe that's a VO2 max test. I don't know, to see what the fueling is, or what my breathing rate is at 170. And I never go beyond 170, although theoretically my max is probably around 180-ish. I think it's unwise to go too high when, I'm obviously a bit chubby. And I don't know what's going inside, so I don't want a bit of arterial plaque to break off. That's what's going to cause a stroke, or that's what's going to cause a heart attack. So I don't want to go into the danger zone, let's say. So I think 170, although it isn't my max, that's my psychological max, where I don't want to kill myself. So it'll be very interesting to go back to iThrive in 6 months' time and potentially do another test. I'll ask him what I can do. It was probably VO2 max, to see where the fueling changes and what I'm doing at those very high exertion rates. So that was really fascinating. So on this page around fat burning zones, my peak fat max, that's when I'm actually burning the most fat, is 98 beats per minute, which is sort of crazy. I never would have thought it'd been that low, to be honest. And my inflection point to carbohydrate fueling is 110 approximately. So that means for the majority of my sort of fat burning exercise, I've got to stay in the zone between 100 and 110 beats. So I just tried that before recording this video on the hydro for a 30-minute row, and it was quite fun. It felt so light, and I wasn't really doing anything, but by the end of it, let's say after 20 minutes of the 30-minute row, I was feeling warm. So I had the internal warmth, so I'd warmed up, and by the end, I had sweat on my forehead. It wasn't dripping, it was just enough you could wipe it like this, and there was sweat. So obviously, heat is energy being burnt, which is good. Sweat is trying to cool you down, so your body is working. So I learned something from the report, and I put it into practice tonight on the rower, where I need to really rein it in and not go flat out all the time. Well, not even flat out, not even at 140, 150. I used to be doing virtually nothing. And this is on the Peloton, actually. When I'm on the Peloton, there's instructors, they're sort of motivating you, and you're out of the saddle sometimes, and heart rate's high. And I'll usually have on resistance maybe 50 to 60%. And I never really go below 50% because that's my sort of cruise. Like when I'm out and about on the road, I'll be cruising at a certain speed and a certain cadence. And that's what it feels like for outside bike on the Peloton. But they will go down to like 30%. So if I unscrew the knob and go down to 30% resistance, it's like, this is not doing anything. But that's the zone I need to be in. I need to get my heart rate down to 100 to 110, and then I can crank it back up for the intense bits. So I need to really relearn this. So bear in mind, this is the 4th of October. I'm going to make a plan to do a lot more in this zone 2 or borderline zone 1, I guess, in this fat burning zone. And obviously I've got the kettlebell, so I'll do a bit more strength training because I haven't really done any of that recently. And occasionally I'll just have to go flat out because I love it when you're pushing really hard and you're drenched in sweat and you feel like you've done a proper workout, and see if it makes a difference and I get out of this plateau that I'm having with Mounjaro. So that was it. It was awesome. The DEXA scan and the 3D scan were really interesting. But for me, on this weight loss journey and with Mounjaro, the resting metabolic rate combined with the fat burning zones and the ride on the watt bike were really key to understanding potentially maybe what I'm doing wrong in terms of exercise. So I'm actually really excited to find out what I can do over the next 6 months to kickstart weight loss, change my diet, to eat more of the right stuff, reduce my exercise intensity, and let's see what happens. So this is really exciting. Anyway, so thanks for Mark at I Thrive in Putnam in the UK. I thought it was really great. It was really good value as well. So check them out, and I'll save up and do another test in 6 months. They say don't do it before 6 months because it is like a small X-ray. It's a bit of radiation. So we're in October. So what's that? January, February, March, April. Yeah, I'll do it April or May when the weather's getting nice. That'd be good. And do another test. Awesome. All right. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe. And also remember this wasn't sponsored. So this is completely my own cash. So that's it. I'll see you soon. Cheers.